Okay, so my name is Mary Hodges. I use the E. The E stands for Eunice. I use the E because that's my professional name with the unions. So just to be clear about that. And I come from a long line of like Mary Eunices. I'm not the first Mary Eunice. I'm named after my mother. And then there are other Mary Eunices that I probably no longer living. So that name is like passed down. So I just want to acknowledge the matriarchs in my family. And I am currently based out of New York and Virginia. And I'm trying to think, as far as, let me go backwards a little bit. So I have my Master's of Fine Arts from University of Connecticut in acting, and my Bachelor of Fine Arts in acting from Virginia Commonwealth University. Virginia Commonwealth University, of course, is in Virginia, in Richmond, and UConn, the main campus in Storrs, Connecticut. And what else did you want to know? How did I?
How did you come into acting?
How did I come into acting? Well, it wasn't something that I knew I wanted to do. I kind of stumbled upon it when I was in college, in undergraduate. My major at the time was mass communications. I thought I was going to go into the PR track. Previously, you had to meet with your advisor, and my advisor told me I needed an arts elective, and she suggested a course called Intro to Stage Performance for non-majors as an arts elective. And she said, "Oh, I hear really good things about it. It's fun." So that course met one night a week over at the theater department, in like the sublevel, in the basement. It was like very mysterious at the time to me. I was like, ooh, it's like we're going into the arts building, and we had to trek all the way across campus because the School of Mass Communications was very kind of formal. And so people carried briefcases to lecture. I never forgot that. And I didn't quite fit in with that, but I didn't know that at the time. I was trying. And the lecture halls were like huge. And when we would trek over to the art building, it was a total different vibration there. And we met Monday night for 3 hours once a week. And a grad student, I'm going to call her out, Rhonda Kaiser, she was a theater major, a graduate theater major, and she taught the course. And so, and it was just like my advisor said, it was fun. We played games, and just to kind of set it up a little bit for you. So about halfway through the course, we had one-on-one meetings, and she asked me what my major was, and I told her, and she said, "Well, do you like it? Are you happy with your major? Do you feel passionate about it?" And no one had asked me that. And it gave me pause, and I was stumped. I didn't know what to say. It was too long of a pause because you're really supposed to be excited about your major. And why I chose that major, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I was good at. So it seemed like the safe thing for me to do was maybe I'll choose mass communications and go into PR. I mean, I did some forensics in high school, where you do public speaking. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I was good at. No one told me I was good at anything. And this is key, just to remember that part of it as we get into the further conversation. So, she said, "Well, it doesn't seem like you're really passionate about your major. Well, what I want to suggest to you is that you change your major to theater, because I think you can do it. I think you have a natural knack for acting, and you can do this." And that was another pause, because I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting her to say that to me. And so, and I think my response to her, I don't remember. I have to ask her. I think I said, "Really?" I was like, "We just play games." Like, how can you like determine if you're good at something by to me, it was like playing games, and it was easy, and we were having fun. Is this real? And so she told me to think about it, and if I was interested in changing my major, and that she would help me, and that I would have to audition for the School of the Arts to get into the program. But she said, she was serious, and she said, you have a natural thing. I think you can do this. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I clung on to, you're good at something. And you can make a change and have an impact. And then my first production I was cast in was it The Women of Troy, I believe, The Women of Troy, a classic, a Greek classic. And I didn't know anything about Greek theater. My only exposure to any classics was in high school. I believe we had to listen to, of course, Romeo and Juliet. Everyone in high school, we listened to a recording and we talked about it. That was it. So that was like my shift, and was like a really kind of like hardcore, like fast introduction. And I was cast as Cassandra in that production. And I always like wondered, like, why did I get cast in that role, being new and not knowing very much. So I would like to think now that I reflect on that, maybe there was something that the professor, the director saw that was potential there that I wasn't aware of that I had. And then I was cast in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and by another professor as the role of Titania. And that production was also very successful. And I enjoyed it so much. And again, that was my very first Shakespeare production. And I don't think I ever had any moments of, what am I saying? What am I doing? I think ignorance served me very well, because I didn't come from, a lot of the students came from big drama high school programs, right? That was not my experience. So I didn't know not to, some people have these preconceived notions of what Shakespeare is, and it's mostly the language, speaking the language. So since I didn't have any of that, I dove right into the words and the language and what the story was. It's like knowing what the story is. And I loved the language that Titania speaks beautifully, the imagery, the metaphors, it's beautiful language. And I loved saying it and how it came out of my mouth. So I really enjoyed that first experience. And I didn't know that would be like the beginning of doing a lot more down the road.
Were you intentionally seeking out being in classics, or did it just kind of happen that way?
It just kind of happened that way. I didn't deliberately go out and seek classical work.
Did you,
kind of
into your professional career, did you start to seek it out?
Yeah. I think after, let's see what happened. I guess in grad school, because after undergraduate, I didn't do any classical. I mostly did a deep dive into the canon of African-American playwrights, and worked with the late Ernie McClintock. And we worked on the classics from the Black literary canon. So I did a lot of that work. And then when I went off to grad school, it came back again. Okay. So then I did 1 year at Arizona State in Tempe, and we did this really futuristic As You Like It production. And then I transferred from Arizona State to University of Connecticut at Storrs. And there I went on to do Hamlet, where I played Queen Gertrude. Hamlet, that production was kind of Suzuki-based production. It was highly stylized. And the setting was kind of like in a monastery. And it was a really rich, and our Hamlet was a woman. And so that ruffled quite a few feathers. And then me playing Hamlet's mother. So it was quite a diverse cast, where that wasn't popular at the time.
That is a perfect segue, because I really wanted to ask you about your time in the all-female version of Othello.
Mhm.
You played Cassio, right?
That's right. Mhm.
Um, so what was that like for you, being in an all black, it was all black, right? All black, all female, or
Actually,
mostly?
it wasn't all, it was multicultural.
Okay.
It wasn't an all black cast. It was a multicultural production. Of course, our lead, Othello, Deborah Ann Bird, is African American. And I'm not sure, have you looked her up?
Yeah, she actually came to our class.
Oh,
And so we
fantastic.
had a great time with her. She was so
Okay.
lovely.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And you know, she's touring her show, her solo show.
Yeah, yeah. We were lucky enough she sent us a link to it, so we got to watch a recording of the show too.
Oh,
It's really great.
fantastic. Yeah. So, I mean, I did a lot of work with Deborah
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
Harlem Shakespeare and Take Wing and Soar.
Yes.
So yeah, we actually got to, Deborah and I, we got to dance with that about uh, 2 times, really 3 times. We got to play around with it because we did a virtual reading production, of it last fall. And Lisa Volpe came back and played Iago. So that was really special. And we actually like pushed the envelope a little bit for that virtual reading because we actually did virtual, fights, if you will. We decided to just have some fun with it. And so that was the third time. And of course, the first time was with Lisa, um, which was a heightened stage reading at City College with weapons and choreographed fights. Um, and then the next time we got to do it was the full, like a full production that Trezana Beverly directed. And so it's Lieutenant Cassio playing that is so much fun. First of all, it's fun. And he's one of those characters that kind of like weaves in between the Iago story and Othello story. Kind of hangs like in between there. Like Shakespeare does that with quite a few of some of his characters. They kind of hang in there. And it's one of those roles that I think is often taken for granted because when you think about productions of Othello that you've seen, I have to think really hard to remember Cassio. And I think that's unfortunate. I really made some distinct choices for him. And every time I've done Cassio, it's been done as I performed it as a man, not as a woman being Cassio.
Yeah. What was that like for you? Deborah Ann talked a lot about how that was kind of a jumping off point for her own exploration of her gender.
Mhm.
Did you feel similarly?
No, because I've actually done gender bender roles before I started working with Harlem Shakespeare. I worked with Judith Shakespeare Company, which no longer exists, but Joanne Zapay, I want to shout her out because it's important to uplift, the pioneers and the people that have introduced you to the work. And Joanne Zapay ran a company in New York called Judith Shakespeare Company, and their whole mission was putting women in the power roles. So if that meant the male roles, then you got to do the male roles. And men got to do the female roles or vice versa, or it was mixed up. It wasn't like there's another company, forgive me, I can't think of their name, where it's all women and they play all the roles. Judith Shakespeare was a little different. They had men and women, and we just mixed it up. But the mission was the women played the lead roles. So in that experience, that's where I started playing men. I didn't play any male roles in university setting. So that was like interesting, right? When I got to New York, and I think my first Shakespeare role was in Henry VI, Part 2, and where I played Jack Cade and some other roles because you usually had one lead role and then maybe you played ensemble roles. And that was like fantastically fun, because they would bring in a fight person to work with you and to work with weapons. And with that one, I think we were very creative and used like a hoe, like from a spade, and that became the weapon. And then I went on and did some other work with Judith Shakespeare where I played male roles. So when I worked on Cassio, that wasn't a big leap for me because I had done that kind of work already, as far as in the body and how you move. And I already had fight experience. So so not to say that it wasn't a challenge. If anything, it was like, okay, I get to use everything that I've been doing and do this role like I feel it could be done, and not think of the role as a sidebar or a shadow. So if anything, I like was very excited to do it and to bring kind of like some flavor, some to the role, because Cassio, when you look into who he is a person of education, intellect, and sophistication, which was why he was chosen as a fellow Zen sign and why Iago was jealous of him. He wasn't your average Joe. And so I enjoyed bringing my take to that. And also, again, roles that men that I've seen play the role. Sorry, guys, but men that I've seen play the role, I felt missed out on that. So
meaning that they didn't play him as like intelligently as he could.
One-dimensional.
Yeah, I see.
It's one thing you look good in your costume, but then what are you going to do?
Right. So you said since you'd done work at the Judith Shakespeare Company, which had women playing these lead roles, did you feel again that you were kind of used to that sort of like gender power dynamic and like diversity of casting when you came into the all-female Othello? Because that, just to reference Deborah Ann again, that was something that she said she was really excited about, just having that diverse cast and having like such female energy in a space.
Yeah.
Did you feel similarly, or was it something you're kind of already used to from previous productions?
I think what made it a little different with Harlem Shakespeare Theater is that it's an African-American based company. So the mission is clear as far as elevating, getting, having African-Americans in those high profile roles is the mission, versus what I said to you with Judith Shakespeare was women were this big part of the mission of placing them in those lead roles. So the work with them was very, specific. And there were productions that were just all African-American with Harlem Shakespeare. So this one kind of opened it up and invited others in. And so I had already been, again, working that way. But just to have the company of all women was like, we had so much fun in the dressing room, And so we did the production where the one production that was a full production, we bearded up. We did the whole like 9 yards with that one, and with the Elizabethan costumes. And then there are times where I didn't, feel like I needed to hide in with the facial hair. It's all in dropping down on your voice and how you carry your body. So there's always like, whether it's just like all women or mixed cast where the women are being uplifted in it, or given the opportunity to shine and to lead, always have been like wonderful experiences. But particularly with Harlem Shakespeare, you have a little bit extra sense of pride, because that is the mission.
Right. Yeah. I wanted to ask, another play that we studied in this class this quarter was Keith Hamilton Cobb's American War. And I was wondering if, have you seen the play or read it?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay. I in it he speaks a lot about I think a particular episode within the play is he's talking about his experience, I think in college, maybe in high school, of being really kind of stymied in his career goals and what he wanted to do as a Black actor. There's a scene where they have to choose a monologue to memorize, and he really wants to do Titania. And they're like, oh, well, why don't you do Othello? That seems like it's more your speed or whatever. And then the whole play is kind of this, it's like he's auditioning for Othello, but then he kind of fades in and out of this this audition to kind of talk about his history and what he's thinking, and kind of dialogues with the casting director. Anyway, I was wondering if any of that resonates with your experience. Like, have you felt pigeonholed at all as a Black actress?
Black actress as it pertains to Shakespeare?
Yes, or you can answer more broadly too, if you'd like to.
Well, that was the fun thing about our work with Judas Shakespeare, is there were men that played some of the women roles. I remember when we did, was it Richard III? And this wonderful actor, he got to play Anne, Lady Anne, and his performance was just brilliant. I think that's unfortunate that people still continue to type into cast, regardless of your gender and your race. So I'll just say that. I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I when I look at kind of the body of what I've done, what sticks out to me is that I've done more males than I have done women. And so it's been a blessing, but at the same time, I can do more than just do the male roles, right? Is it how am I being perceived? Can I play like the women roles? So I would love to play some more women roles, and I would like to keep playing male roles. And then when you go beyond the companies that I've worked with, that's where it seemed to have stopped. Like, I didn't make any traction with some of the bigger, larger Shakespeare institutions. Why? I don't know. And that that frustrated me, and still frustrates me when I look at when I see who's being chosen, the companies, the institutions that are selecting, and this goes into the casting, right? And opening up your eyes in the box. So it should be interesting as people start gathering back together post-pandemic to see, because there's been a lot of talk about this, diversity, inclusion. I mean, I feel like we've been talking about diversity and inclusion for I don't know how long. So for me, it's like a really tired subject. So it's like, so what are you going to do about it is the question. Because there are many actors that I know of color that are classically trained. Are they doing classical work? Some, yes, most of us know, especially African-American women. We don't get cast in Shakespeare unless there's an angle to it. And that's another thing that kind of like, I want to be frank here, that pisses me off. It's like, why are we only cast if there's an angle? So I'm all for all Black productions of Shakespeare, but then what about with these institutions? But what about the rest of your season? are you diversifying the rest of your season, or you feel like you don't have to because, oh, we did that all Black Shakespeare over the summer. We don't have to carry it over all year. Isn't that enough?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
No, that's so
really
frustrating.
pisses me
Right.
off.
Yeah.
Or, you know, as far as like Black Americans, you know, actors, oh, we don't do Shakespeare, but you hire people that have an accent, a dialect from another country because, oh, it maybe sounds better, more pleasant to the ear. That's so insulting.
Yeah.
So those are the, you know, the two things that I've seen that are like obstacles. And when I look back over, I mean, I'm still fairly young and I hope I get a chance to, but I've kind of, part of me have given up on sending in my resume and picture to these institutions. Like, how long have I been out here? And I have gotten in any traction. I've never worked at Shakespeare in the Park in New York. I've never worked at Shakespeare and Company. I've never worked at Oregon Shakespeare Festival. You name any big major Shakespeare institution, I haven't worked there. Theater for a New Audience, right there in New York. All they do is, you know, uplift classical work.
Have you seen any change, do you think, over your career? Like, is the
No, I haven't.
no,
I'll
yeah,
stop you right there. I
yeah.
haven't.
Yeah.
No. I think people need to genuinely want to have change. I don't believe in forcing any institution to make the change. And there's different approaches to that. I think there's a lot of like talk, a lot of activism and visibility, but still at the end of the day, it's the people that are running these institutions or companies or organizations. They have to be the ones to do it and initiate it and activate it. And it starts from the top down to who their casting people are. And also the directors and the creative teams who you hire. And then from there, it's a lot of it is like names too. We're going after names, you know, people who are visible in television or in film, which is fine and good and everything. But, you know, there's a lot of us grunts still out there, you know, who have done the time and are skilled and are ready to do the work. So that's what I would say to that. And then part two is, yes, we need more Harlem Shakespeare theaters. We need more classical theater of Harlem's. And they need to be supported and uplifted. We need more Judith Shakespeare because a lot of companies can't survive on and not receiving funding from the state. A lot of companies rely on the funding, and some of it isn't very much, and it comes with restrictions. So we have to think about how also these companies are being funded and they need support. And yes, we need, like, I was having a conversation, quite a few different conversations, where I was saying, well, if I'm not being invited to perform on the stage, then the next thing is I would like to direct. I would love to direct some classical work and some Shakespeare.